What makes a football club big? To some people, it is solely based upon trophies. Real Madrid are the biggest club on the planet, Al Ahly are the undisputed kings of Africa, and Arsenal will never be a true super club until they lift the Champions League. But that definition would make Huddersfield Town or Bury bigger clubs than either Middlesbrough or Brighton, Real Zaragoza a bigger club than Real Betis, and Pro Vercelli a bigger club than Atalanta. To others, then, it is a little bit more nuanced and intangible. It's a combination of fan bases, both match-going and worldwide, not just history, but legacy and lasting impact upon the sport, and, increasingly, within the modern game, revenue and economic might. How you value each of those factors, as well as trophy hauls, is likely to dictate which clubs you consider to be big clubs, and how big you consider them to be. Are Ajax, for example, a bigger club than Arsenal or Inter Milan? Well, they've won more trophies, including more Champions Leagues or European Cups, and they have had a greater impact upon the sport in terms of shaping the way in which football is played, but they don't have a bigger fan base or a higher average attendance, and their revenue is lower than Fulham and Crystal Palace's. Meanwhile, Inter and Arsenal rank 14th and 7th in the world in terms of revenue. Personally, I think that it is an almost meaningless categorization that means different things to different people, and is primarily invoked by clubs with large fan bases as something to cling on to during periods in which their team isn't very good, but nonetheless, I thought that it might be interesting to take a look at some of the world's biggest clubs, by every criteria other than trophies, but who don't have the trophies to show for their supposed stature. To be clear, this isn't the 7 biggest clubs who've never won anything. I have also made that video in the past if you're interested. It is the biggest clubs who have won surprisingly little. Newcastle United, for example, who just won the League Cup, average over 50,000 every week and sit 9th in an all-time English top-flight league table. Yet that was their first major trophy in 70 years, and they haven't won the league title since the 20s. Botafogo are one of Brazil's so-called G12 or Big 12 clubs, and are synonymous with Brazilian legends like Garrincha, Jairzinho, Gerson and Gigia. But prior to 2024, they had only won the Brasileiro twice and had never lifted the Copa Libertadores. And Bayer Leverkusen, despite finishing as Bundesliga runners-up 5 times, DFB Pokal runners-up 3 times, and UEFA Champions League runners-up once, were literally nicknamed Vizekusen, or Neverkusen, owing to their ability to fall at the final hurdle before winning an invincible domestic double last season. Those are just some examples of teams that might have featured had I made this video a year ago, just to set the tone, but I didn't, did I? I'm making it now, so they don't feature. Also, just to be clear, I know that it is April Fool's Day, but this is not, I repeat, not an April Fool's video. Anyone who is expecting any jokes, humour, or even mild amusement is going to be bitterly disappointed. There is nothing funny about this video. I know that some of you still don't believe me. This is not a repeat of a couple of years ago when I made a half-an-hour video about a club from Mozambique that doesn't really exist but only revealed it at the end on April Fool's Day. That is not this at all. Alright, without further ado, who isn't a club but did win an MLS Cup at DC United in 2004? Here are 7 big football clubs who hardly ever win anything. 7th, Vitória de Guimarães. As far as most people outside of Portugal are concerned, Portuguese football starts and ends with the country's so-called Big 3. Between them, Benfica, Porto and Sporting have won 88 out of a possible 90 Primeira Liga titles since the league was founded in 1934, and they will make it 89 out of 91 this season, as they, unsurprisingly, occupy the league's top 3 positions yet again. In terms of total honours won, Benfica have 90, Porto have 86, and Sporting have 56. No other Portuguese club is even in double figures. The club with the next most honours won isn't Vitória de Guimarães though, who are Portugal's 4th or, at the very least, 5th biggest club by almost any metric, but Boa Vista, who have won 9 trophies, the most recent coming in the 2000 to 2001 season, when they became one of only 2 clubs other than Portugal's Big 3, and the first since the 1940s, to lift the Primeira Liga title. In fact, Vitória aren't even the 5th, 6th or 7th most successful Portuguese club. They are joint 8th, tied with Académica and Beira-Mar on just 2 trophies won throughout the club's entire 102-year existence. That's despite the fact that Vitória have comfortably the highest average attendance in the Primeira Liga outside of the Big Three, averaging over 18,000 fans at their home games, which is nearly 5,000 more than the division's next highest average, which comes courtesy of Vitória's bitter rivals Braga, who have, incidentally, won 4 times as many trophies as them. Vitória even had the 4th highest attendance in Portugal, so the highest outside of the Big Three, in the 2006-07 season, while competing in Portugal's 2nd division. Vitória's support has been the best of the rest in Portugal since time immemorial, and they also have the 4th most seasons spent in the top flight, and the 4th most members out of all Portuguese clubs, trailing only, you guessed it, Benfica, Porto and Sporting. Vitória also sit 4th in the Primeira Liga's all-time table, behind only, yes, obviously the Big Three, yet they have remarkably little to show for it. Not only have Vitória never won a Primeira Liga title, they've never even finished 2nd. The club's 4 highest league finishes, in which they finished 3rd, came in the 1968-69, 1986-87, 1997-98 and 2007-08 seasons, so they average about 1 third place finish a decade. They're actually overdue one at the moment. Meanwhile, they have an extraordinarily woeful record in finals. Vitória's only major trophy was a Taça de Portugal crown, Portugal's equivalent of the FA Cup, in the 2012-13 season, in which they scored 2 goals in 2 minutes to beat Benfica in the final. That is one of 7 Taça de Portugal finals that the club has competed in, but they lost every single other one. Boa Vista, who have won the Taça de Portugal 5 times as many times as Vitória, so 5 times, have actually competed in fewer finals than them. It is a truly cursed record, and Vitória have also only won 1 of the 4 Portuguese Super Cups that they have competed in, with their sole success against Porto in 1988 being the only other trophy that the club has ever won. With a more than 30,000 capacity stadium, Vitória still have room to grow, with the aim of turning Portugal's Big Three into a Big Four. Vitória's membership, with that in mind, voted overwhelmingly in favour of selling 46% of the club's shares, retaining majority member ownership, to billionaire Aston Villa owners Nassef Sevens and Wes Edens in February 2023. UEFA rules restricted Sevens and Eden's ownership stake to 29% in the end, and Vitória are yet to reap the rewards of their super-rich minority shareholders, currently sat 6th in the Primeira Liga table, below Azores base Santa Clara, who probably deserve a HITC Sevens video all of their own at some stage. 6th. Talleres de Córdoba. Argentine football is an absolute minefield. It would be easier to resolve every conflict in global geopolitics, figure out the origins of the universe, and understand who is paying $299 for these. For crying out loud. All in one afternoon, that it would be to figure out how Argentine football works, and that is coming from someone who recently made a 43-minute video trying to explain how Argentine football works. I will give you some facts though. Talleres de Córdoba have the 3rd highest average attendance in Argentina, behind Superclásico rivals Boca Juniors and River Plate, and the 25th highest on the planet, above Juventus, PSG, and a Barcelona team currently exiled from the Camp Nou, yet they have never won a Primera Division title, and the only non-lower league titles that they have won, of any description, is a Copa Conmebol in 1999, which is a competition that only existed from 1992 to 1999. Talleres actually won the tournament's final ever edition, and a Supercopa Internacional, which is Argentina's new Super Cup, which runs alongside the already existing Super Cup, but is hosted by a different country each year in an attempt to generate additional revenue, which was only founded in 2022, and Talleres won the 2nd ever edition in 2023. There was also no Supercopa Internacional held in 2024, which means that Talleres' only trophies came in the final edition of a competition that no longer exists, and in the 2nd edition of a competition that failed to successfully hold a 3rd edition in 3 years. though it does plan to return in 2025. As I said, Argentine football is a mess. For a club that averages over 50,000 fans at their 57,000 capacity stadium, putting them pretty much neck and neck with Boca Juniors, a club that has won over 70 trophies, including 35 Primera Division titles, it is a pretty staggering lack of success. Talleres haven't always been one of Argentina's biggest clubs. They only reached the Primera Division for the first time in 1969, and they only ranked 23rd in the all-time Primera Division standings as a result. That still puts them above clubs like Arsenal de Sarandi, who won the Primera Division in 2012, in addition to the Copa Argentina, the Supercopa Argentina, and the Copa Sudamericana. And since the end of the 60s, Talleres have often been highly competitive, with, like Vitória de Guimarães, an absolutely abysmal record when it comes to bottling things. So, they have been Primera Division runners-up 3 times in 1977, 2023, and 2024, which is the joint most of any team without winning the league, and they have reached the Copa Argentina final twice, in 2020 and 2022, losing, obviously, on both occasions. There were 3 Talleres players in the Argentina squad that won the 1978 World Cup, but being that they played for Talleres and all, they were unable to convert that into club success. Having felt like success was surely on the horizon at long last for Talleres, after coming so close in recent years, they are currently 10th out of 15 teams in Zone B of the Primera Division this season, having won just one of their opening 10 games. 5th, FC Krasnodar. I was a little bit torn about including FC Krasnodar in this 7, because the club was only formally established in 2008, but you can count this as an inclusion for the city of Krasnodar as a whole if you like. Until going bankrupt and being dissolved in 2018, Cuban Krasnodar were the city's biggest club. They played Soviet Top League and Russian Premier League football during the Soviet and obviously post-Soviet eras, often attracting big crowds and even competing in Europe, but never actually winning anything at the highest level. The closest Cuban Krasnodar came was a 2015 Russian Cup final, in which they took an early lead but went on to lose 3-1 in extra time against Lokomotiv Moscow, just 3 years before the club was dissolved. There is a new Cuban Krasnodar that was founded after the original club went bankrupt in 2018, but whilst they compete in the Russian Second League, FC Krasnodar, founded in 2008, has subsumed a lot of Cuban Krasnodar support. Whereas Cuban Krasnodar sometimes attract crowds in the hundreds, let alone the thousands, FC Krasnodar now have the second highest average attendance in the Russian Premier League at 26,776. That's more than Spartak Moscow and CSKA Moscow, Russia's 2 most successful clubs, who have won a combined 79 trophies. FC Krasnodar, by contrast, have never won a single one, unless you count the Match Premier Cup, a pre-season friendly tournament that was only ever held 3 times, which Krasnodar won in 2019. That was played behind closed doors at a semi-professional stadium in Austria, in which only 4 Russian clubs were present, so if you'll count that, you really will count anything. You might as well count any times in which their first team has won against their reserves in training. FC Krasnodar's trophylessness might be about to end though. Founded by Sergei Galitsky, the billionaire co-owner of Magnit, Russia's largest retailer, Galitsky built Krasnodar a brand new 20 billion ruble, 35,179 capacity stadium in 2016, which now has among the highest occupancy rates in Russian football. Further investment has been made in the academy, playing squad and facilities, with emphatic results. Krasnodar reached the final of the Russian Cup in 2014 and again in 2023, losing both on penalties against Rostov and CSKA Moscow, and just last season, they were Russian Premier League runners-up, finishing 1 point behind title winners Zenit St. Petersburg, who are the only Russian club with a higher average attendance than them. In previous years, that would have earned Krasnodar a spot in the Champions League, but Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, leading to Russia being suspended from both FIFA and UEFA club and international competitions. The partial invasion we were fine with, they were even allowed to host the World Cup during that time, but a full-scale invasion? Don't take the piss. Football's authorities have got to draw a line somewhere, and it turns out that it is somewhere between Zaporizhia and Crimea. With only 9 games remaining this season, Krasnodar are currently top of the Russian Premier League table, at least at the time of recording, 3 points clear of Zenit St. Petersburg. In a couple of months' time, therefore, Krasnodar might have found a way out of this 7, but for now, they are an ideal inclusion, representing a city of over 1 million people, which has fewer national championships than Spartak Vladikavkaz, who were dissolved in 2020, and whose name I clearly can't even pronounce. 4th, FC Köln. I limited myself to just 1 club per country for the purposes of this 7. I think that a bit of geographic diversity tends to make things more interesting, whether that be in terms of football clubs, cuisine, or indeed romantic partners. But there are so many big clubs in Germany with tremendous support, despite having very little success to show for it. I spent most of last summer living in Dusseldorf, home of Fortuna Dusseldorf, for Euro 2024. Fortuna have an average attendance of over 40,000 in a 54,600 capacity stadium, despite the fact that they currently compete in the second Bundesliga and have only ever won 3 major trophies: a German championship in 1933, the same year that Hitler became Chancellor and turned Germany into a one-party state, and back-to-back DFB Pokals in 1979 and 1980, a decade before German reunification. Hertha Berlin, meanwhile, and Hanover, average 51,400 and 37,508 fans at their home games, also in the second Bundesliga, and have won just 4 and 3 trophies throughout their combined 260 years of existence. That is an average of just 1 trophy every 37 years, and 2 of Hertha's 4 trophies came in the DFB Liga Pokal over 20 years ago, a competition which no longer exists. Their last major trophy before that came in 1931. Any one of those clubs could have featured, but ultimately, it is Dusseldorf's neighbours and eternal enemies Cologne, or Köln, who feature in 4th. Much as my undying loyalty has to be with Dusseldorf in the battle between the two cities, having made it my home for 4 weeks, by almost any metric, Cologne are at least a marginally bigger club. They have a higher average attendance, selling out the 49,698 capacity Rhein Energy Stadion every week. They have a lot more members, and they have spent over twice as many seasons in the Bundesliga. In fact, by some metrics, Cologne are one of the biggest clubs in the world. Their average attendance, which is limited by their stadium capacity, is the 32nd highest worldwide and the 4th highest among second-tier clubs, all 4 of whom are in the second Bundesliga. They have the 11th most members, 132,439, of any club in world football, above the likes of Porto and Real Madrid, and they rank 9th in the all-time Bundesliga table, above 4-time national champions Kaiserslautern and reigning invincible double winners Bayer Leverkusen. Cologne have won more than Fortuna, but not by much. With 7 trophies in total, Cologne are only the joint 10th most successful club in Germany, despite being by far the biggest club in Germany's 4th largest city, which is home to more than 1 million people. What's more, Cologne haven't won anything since they lifted the DFB Pokal in the 1982-83 season, over 40 years ago. Their last final and Bundesliga runners-up medal also came over 30 years ago, and they are currently in the second Bundesliga, having become a real yo-yo club since the late 1990s. 3rd, Tractor SC. It's no good lauding the merits of geographic diversity in life and then sticking solely to European and South American football, which is why, in 3rd place, we are heading to Iran. Not literally, of course. The UK Foreign Office currently advises against all travel to Iran, with British nationals described as being, and I quote, at significant risk of arrest, questioning, or detention, with a further warning that having a British passport or connections to the UK can be reason enough for the Iranian authorities to detain you. End quote. That's a real shame because it means that I won't be able to take in a Tractor Cultural Sports Club game anytime soon, and that looks to be a hoot. Founded by the Iran Tractor Manufacturing Company in 1970, hence the name, Tractor SC are based in the city of Tabriz in East Azerbaijan, which, contrary to its somewhat confusing name, isn't in Azerbaijan, but is an Iranian province which borders both Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. You've got no idea how much I want to go on a 20-minute tangent about the history of the region, but I am practicing self-discipline at the moment, so I'm afraid back to the football it is. Traktor moved into the newly built Sarhan Stadium in 1996, which has a capacity of 66,833. When Traktor reached Iran's Persian Gulf Pro League, the top flight of Iranian football, for only the second time in the 2009-10 season, they set an attendance record for a newly promoted club in Iran, averaging as many as 60,000 fans at some of their home games. Acquired by Tabritz's best-known business magnate Mohammad Reza Zanouzi in 2018, and out of all of the very well-known Tabritz business magnates, I think we can all agree he is the best-known, everyone has heard of him, Traktor have since become one of Iran's highest-spending clubs. Traktor's head coach, Dragan Skocic, formerly managed Iran's national team and joined Traktor from Croatia's under-21s, bringing with him fellow Croatians Igor Poshtansky and Domagoj Drozdic as players, the latter of whom was actually capped by Croatia's senior team in 2015. Former Portuguese youth international Ricardo Alves also plays for the club. For all of the spending and support, Traktor have averaged nearly twice as many fans at their home games as any other Iranian club this season. They don't yet have the trophies to show for it. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be including them in this video. Persian Gulf Pro League runners-up in the 2011-12, 2012-13 and 2014-15 seasons, Traktor's only top-level success has come in the HITC Cup, which they have won twice, both in the last 12 years. As with Krasnodar, however, that could all be about to change. With only 8 games left of the season, or 7 in the case of some teams, Traktor currently enjoy a slender lead at the top of the Persian Gulf Pro League table and could, whisper it quietly, be in with a shout of a first ever Iranian championship. I mean, you don't have to whisper it too quietly, of course, given that I can't go to Iran and YouTube is banned there. To any sneaky Iranians watching via a VPN, though, I see you, and I will be over for a Traktor game just as soon as this whole tensions and risk of arrest, questioning, or detention nonsense is over. Second, Tottenham Hotspur. Well, you've all been waiting for it, but I'll be honest with you, this wasn't the slam dunk of an inclusion that most of you probably think. Spurs might be the quintessential win-nothing club in a lot of people's eyes, but the reality is, they've actually won a fair bit. 26 trophies to be specific, which is by far the most of any club featured in this 7, and is the 6th most in English football, above Newcastle, Everton and Aston Villa. So why are they still featured in second? Well, Spurs have only won 2 top-flight league titles for a start, which is fewer than Huddersfield or Blackburn, so they've always been more of a cup team, and then there is the fact that, for quite a long time now, they haven't even been that. Tottenham are currently trophyless in 17 years since winning the League Cup in 2008, and it's 34 years since they won a trophy that isn't called the League Cup. During that time, Leicester City and Blackburn Rovers have both won Premier League titles, while Spurs haven't won the league in over 60 years. Portsmouth and Wigan have won the FA Cup, and even West Ham, who were Tottenham's closest competitors to feature as England's representative in this video, won the UEFA Conference League in 2023. More important than any of that, however, is the fact that Spurs are by far the biggest club in this 7, and, by any metric, one of the biggest and most powerful clubs in the world. They have the world's 12th highest average attendance, above Arsenal, Liverpool or Man City. They sit 7th in an all-time English football top-flight league table, sandwiched between serial modern-era winners Chelsea and Man City, and, perhaps most importantly in the context of the modern era, they rank 9th in the world in terms of revenue, above the likes of Borussia Dortmund, Atletico Madrid, AC Milan, Inter Milan and Benfica. Do I need to compare Tottenham's trophy haul over the last 10, 20 or 30 years to any of those clubs? I think probably not. Spurs are uniquely unsuccessful for a club of their size and resources within the modern era, which is another topic that I have made an entire video about, should you be interested, and therefore, whilst more successful than the likes of Krasnodar or Traktor in historic terms, they're still good value for an inclusion. First, RC Lens. I don't think that a lot of people outside of France realise just how big of a club RC Lens are. Lens isn't the biggest city in France, it's not even the second biggest, or the third biggest, or the fourth biggest, or the fifth. Look, I'll just save us all some time here. It is the 240th biggest city in France. You can see why I had to take a shortcut there, with a population of just 32,697. The Lens-Louvain metropolitan area is home to just shy of 150,000 people, but it is one of the few places in France, along with Marseille and Lyon, where you will rarely see a football shirt other than the region's local club. Founded 119 years ago, Lens have had impressive support for a long time. Located in a strong working-class community, with an economy that was once centred around coal mining, Lens are comparable in some respects to fellow football-obsessed cities like Newcastle, Dortmund, Gelsenkirchen or Sunderland. 30 years ago, Lens had the second highest average attendance in Ligue 1 when many clubs' crowds were pitiful, and 3 decades on, it is only the capacity of their stadium that restricts them from having even higher crowds. Lens sell out the 38,223 Stade Boulard de la Lys every week, with a reported further 20,000 supporters on their season ticket waiting list. With a larger stadium, it is feasible that Lens could have the second highest attendances in France and among the highest in Europe, despite having such a modest local population and both modern and historic success. Despite finishing as Ligue 1 runners-up 5 times, most recently in the 2022-23 season, when they only finished 1 point behind PSG, Lens have only ever won 1 Ligue 1 title in the 1997-98 season, when they pipped Metz to the title by goal difference. Lens have also reached 3 Coupe de France finals in 1948, 1975 and 1998, losing every single one of them. Their only other major trophy came in the Coupe de la Ligue, which was scrapped in 2020, which they won in 1999. Lens' total of 6 trophies, which very generously includes 3 Coupe Charles Drago triumphs, a knockout tournament for teams who were knocked out before the quarterfinals of the Coupe de France, which only existed from 1953 to 1965, and constitutes half of all of their trophies, but even including them, it makes Lens only the joint 13th most successful club in French football, tied with Racing Club de France, who compete in the 5th tier of French football, below Sochaux Montbéliard, who recently suffered an enforced relegation to the 3rd tier, and miles behind Monaco, a club which basically doesn't have any fans. It is a brutal lack of success for a club with not just one of the most numerous fan bases in French football, but also among the loudest, most passionate, and most loyal. That is it for today's video. As I said, not related to April Fool's Day, and not amusing. Stay true to my word on that one. Honourable mentions go to West Ham United, Roma, Lazio, Napoli, Real Betis, Hertha Berlin, Vasco da Gama, Estudiantes, New England Revolution, Fortuna Düsseldorf, Hanover, FC Twente, Pauca, Botafogo, CF Monterrey, and Atlanta United, among others, who all missed out by virtue of either being slightly too successful or slightly not big enough, or some combination of the two, compared to those that featured. I'll let you guess which. Thank you all as ever for watching today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it despite the immense lack of humour. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Hit the like button, like I say, if you enjoyed it. That's apparently useful in some way. And of course, it goes without saying, make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on, not just for this channel, HITC Sevens, but also my second channel, Alfie Potts Armour, which will, at some stage, have a 5th video because I've just been to the Netherlands, and that is going to be it. So that will be the 5th video. I won't give you any more than that, but, you know, I'd highly recommend subscribing because I think it could be alright. Cheers, and have an absolutely sensational day.